Well, when I first hiked the trail in '73, I came back wanting to help the trail, wanting to help maintain it. And when I did ask, to help maintain the trail in Connecticut, it was sort of no, 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 almost a feeling that you should have worked on the trail first before you hiked it. And I think there was a whole generation of trail folks that, because of various economic conditions or society conditions, that people didn't have free time when they were young. They were either going through the Depression or maybe going off to war and then coming back and raising a family. But in the early 70s, there was a lot more leisure time for young people. So this is, the first time, I think, period of time when young people in their 20s or early 30s were doing the trail. And so after that, I kept on wanting to help the trail, pay it back, but I wasn't getting anything back from the ATC. And there was a reunion of AT hikers, I think in the late 70s, that Ed Garvey sponsored down in Harper's Ferry. And, I came down to it and it was nice. But, after it was done, it was all over, And when I got to the Folklife Center, I had a facility there and it wasn't being used during that time. I asked Don West if I could host a gathering of long-distance hikers, because I felt a real need. There was a lot of long-distance hikers now, but their needs weren't being met by the ATC. And so I decided that, I'm just going to have a gathering of long-distance hikers, and I sent out notices and had about 225 people show up. The first gathering in 1982.
So what was the first gathering like?
Oh, it was remarkable. It was people. One guy drove his taxi down from Boston. Another couple drove across country on their motorcycle with a little, like, Chihuahua dog on top of it. And, another guy rode his motorbike in from Colorado. Another guy walked down from Ohio, all the way down from Ohio to West Virginia. And it was just wonderful. More than I could have expected. And, it was just the amount of positive energy. It was nice. It was something that I didn't want to see and I want to see it continue. So I asked the people Monday, when we had our wrap-up session, it used to be 4 days there, Monday morning of Columbus Day, what they wanted to do with this and whether they wanted to continue it in some sort of folk structure. And there seemed to be a lot of interest. So I said, well, I'll schedule a meeting in Harper's Ferry because I want the ATC in on it and National Park Service. And we decided on a weekend, and that's the weekend that we actually, 4 or 5 months later, named the organization and elected officers. Oh no, what I did is I sent out as many things to, Gene Cashin let me have some of the records that the ATC had, sent out letters to people. Back then there wasn't any email. Posted stuff on the trail, sent stuff to hostels. There wasn't that much hostels. And so I really put a lot of effort. I had more time back then. It's before I had children and stuff. And so I had a lot of time to advertise and get the word out. So I think almost everyone that had walked the trail up to that point in time had a good address, got a thing, got a notice. And then, I just put stuff out on the trail as well that summer. So I think a lot of people knew that it was happening. Well, I think, the meeting at Harper's Ferry was just tremendous too. I was a little worried that having it institutionalized, it might have lost something there, but it was, we had great representation from ATC, good representation from National Park Service. Dave Ritchie was, he was a humanist, and just a lot of energy. We had a great representation. We had maintainers, we had trail angels, we had through hikers, and if you look at that picture, we had a wonderful cross section of what I thought the association should be. See, initially, when we were thinking about the name of the group, we had people that wanted to call it like a 2,000 miler society, or something that was more elitist. I said, no, I want this to be for dreamers, for maintainers, for anyone that was interested in the long-distance hiking community, not just long-distance hiking, but long-distance hiking, the culture. So that worked out really well.
And the Folklife Center, how did that become a thing?
Well, Don West is my mentor, and I first worked down there in 1971 as a volunteer, and then from 71 to 81 I helped Don organize some of his poetry reading, drove him when he got to be elderly, and got to know him real well. And he's the only person I've ever met of heroic stature. So in about 1979 he asked me to come down and continue on his work. And I thought it'd be a great honor. And it was just working for living expenses. It wasn't a paid position. But I had to finish up my terminal degree and do my thing first before I did Don West thing, And so I did my thing and had the expeditions and stuff. And so when I came down, and this is just a special place. I hold it dear to my heart. Well, it was in its infancy, so there was a lot more folk. I mean, everyone who came enjoyed it, and they weren't expecting much. As a matter of fact, what they got was a lot more than what they expected. It was cheap back then. It was still, I think, $10, and there was a lot more energy. We've had dancing at every gathering, for the past 24 gatherings, and in the beginning, everyone danced, and if they didn't dance, everyone sat and watched and enjoyed everyone else dancing, and it was just a much more unified group in terms of, I think, the spirit. But we had our divisions, and we were political. We were more political at the gatherings. I always, I don't shy away from controversy, and back then there was talking about road walking and the Cumberland Valley relocation and the use of eminent domain, and I didn't want to sugarcoat it. I saw too much sugarcoating going on at the ATC conference. These were issues that I'd learned from Don West, where this is more than just hiking. When we're walking on the trail, we should know. We hear about all the volunteer hours that the maintainers do and all that, but what about the people who are losing their land and so forth? And we need to be sensitive to that. Well, originally we did square dancing. I feel when I grew up, we had an Intercollegiate Outing Club Association, and that's where I learned dancing. As part of all outdoor activities, there'd always be a square dance, and it was always sort of hand in hand with outdoor enthusiasts. So I just wanted to contribute that as a community builder. And so down south, we had the Hurrah cloggers come in, and clog and the band, and I clogged with them in Blacksburg, and it was just a time we could all celebrate. And I like the connection of the hands, and in some dancing, this connection with the eyes. And so to see all these introverts and supposedly introverts, all together dancing with smiles on their faces, that's what it symbolizes to me. Well, like down south, we would have what's called square dancing, old-time square dancing. And then when we went up to Hanover in 1990, it's called contra dancing up in New England. So we would have a contra dance up New England. But over the years, as the organization got larger in terms of membership and so forth, the amount of people who danced or actually participated in the dance has decreased. And I think it's just a sign of the times in terms of changing membership and who comprises the organization now. So. Well, I think it's a recharging. To me, we grew up on Ed Garvey's book, Adventure of a Lifetime, and I said, why does it have to be an adventure of a lifetime? Why do we have to follow this model? You work all your life, you raise a family, and then you have your adventure of a lifetime. Well, you can have lots of adventures in your lifetime, and so I think one of the nicest things I've seen with the gathering is give people a support group to keep on walking if that's what they want to do, if that's what makes them happy. That it's not socially irresponsible. It may be socially unacceptable, but it's not socially irresponsible. And so, to give people that support. And early on, we always had seminars. How can they afford to keep walking? People wanted to know what were the practical things. We have Albie Pockrob, Cindy Ross, myself, multiple through hikers, Leonard Atkins. And so what was nice about it is that I saw people incorporate the trail into their lives. They made their avocation their vocation. And I think ALDA, having that support group where you didn't feel alone, helped. I think the gathering's even more important nowadays with all this information superhighway. Nothing, I will never, ever think that nothing can compare to the face-to-face interaction. And, with the information superhighway, I've seen more mean-spiritedness than I've ever seen in any gathering. And there's a danger to that. Well, the first gathering, we still had pigs at the Folklife Center and burros and stuff, and the pigs got out one day when everyone was over at the college, and they ransacked a couple people's tents. So that was the big thing, like the second gathering in the advertisement. I said, we said, we'll make sure that we don't have any rampaging porkers, pigs going through people's tents. That was the big thing. 1985 was special. That was 3 years into the 82, 83, the fourth gathering. It just seemed that class had a lot of people that were, just feelers, just their spirits seemed to meld into what ALDA was about. I always remember, it was a lot of work putting on the gathering, but, I enjoyed it, and there was satisfying moments. And I remember at the end of that gathering, they all just got in a big old group hug at the end in front of the college center. That really, that to me said, the dance, that sort of thing, the laughter, the connection, that sort of said, this needs to be continued, and I want to help continue it, And then, eventually, we always thought that it would be good to try to find places where people from New England don't have to drive all the way down to West Virginia. And finally, came around where people were able to get Dartmouth and the Dartmouth Outing Club, and it worked out good. So the whole thing was the ideal thing is to rotate it among the regions, just like the ATC does with their conference. But it's been pretty much Pipestem and Hanover alternating.
If you could sum up, like, as an overall personal feeling about the whole nature of the gathering and the kind of human connections there, how would you put it?
Of the gathering?
Yeah, just.
Sacred time and place. A sacred time and place. And because it's sacred to me, it hurts me sometimes when people don't see it that way. I'm a social change educator, and what I see at the gathering is what I'd like to see in the world. And you don't change the world, by overthrowing governments or changing economic systems. You change the world by seeing people, what makes them happy reinforced. I just, when I ran Hemlock Overlook, at George Mason, a lot of my staff were outdoor ed, but most of my staff were through hikers because I knew they were hard workers, they were disciplined, they were flexible, they could work in all sorts of weather, and for many of them, they wanted to share their joy of their outdoors with other people, and they were looking for ways. I've seen a lot of people blossom as well, just because of the support they've gotten through ALDA. They might have been more, not as social and stuff, and because of ALDA and the friends that they made through ALDA, they've become more, how would I say, socially adept people, which to me is important. Well, the Trail Jeopardy, I wanted to have the gathering, to have, dance, to have some really good, speakers and slideshows to inspire us to keep on doing what we're doing. I wanted it to be informative for people, but I also wanted it to be just fun as well. I wanted, I didn't want it to be all controversy and serious stuff and informative stuff. And part of the fun thing was, the cliff jumping on Sunday morning, right at the break of day, which, lasted for 23 years of the 24 years. The contra dance was a fun thing, or square dance, the clogging. And the first thing we did was, we'd only have one activity, and it was like trail trivia. It was just a goof on trail jeopardy. And of course, back then there wasn't any sort of reality TV or anything like that. It was just a nice play for just to have fun, and a lot of laughter, through the years for trail jeopardy or trail trivia. And then we added the hiking game, which was a spoof of the dating game. And for a while there, these were at the gatherings in Pipestem. That was the only thing that would go on, so everyone could get together and laugh at each other, laugh with each other, but never laugh at people. And it was fun. And that's lost some of it, over the years. I guess people have a different type of fun now, which might not be my type of fun. So that camaraderie, that whole group thing where we're all in this together, outside of maybe having the group photo now, we don't have much where we're all together. Maybe a business meeting, which isn't necessarily the best time, but we don't have that where we all could get together and just have some fun. When we first formed ALDA, because I was associated with it, the ATC was interested because they were concerned that we were going to take over the ATC, they didn't, because even back at that time I had been outspoken on a few issues, so they were concerned that we were going to lead some sort of rebellion, which was never my intent. But over the years, with the, all the coordinators we've had, we're doing ALDA companion now, and all the work trips. We did work trips right from the start to help the ATC, and we always wanted to work with the ATC, but we were going to, choose how we worked with it. We weren't going to be dictated to. We had our own group, and we would help. But over the years, we've had people who were board of managers, and so the relations with the ATC have improved to a point where that's where I had expected it to be. I don't know why people were so afraid at the beginning. Well, they've started this endangered services campaign, which is originally it was because of the hostels or the church hostels that were being closed down because of hiker behavior in town. And that was good. It was never meant to dictate one's behavior on the trail, though. And that's a controversial thing. Like the endangered services campaign is about hiker services. It's not about the freedom of walking on the trail. So that's something that hopefully the people in ALDA will watch. I don't want the organization to become as parochial and provincial and regulated as the organizations that the reason why we had such a big turnout at the first gathering is that these people's needs weren't being met with the existing organization. And we need to always remember that and not become just an imitation of the organizations we were trying to be different from. If I was to rename the organization or even think of because times change, things are different now than they were back in '82. If I was to ever rename the organization or think of another organization, it would probably be called the Appalachian Freedom Hikers. Just the Appalachian Freedom Hikers, because when I was out west hiking again, and I hadn't been out there for 20 years, I was just surprised at the amount of rules and regulations out there. And it made me appreciate the Appalachian Trail even more, that although it's not the longest long-distance trail anymore, it's still the freest. And I think that's where the challenge is, to look at the Appalachian Trail and not say, well, it's 2,100 miles and it's the oldest and maybe the most famous, but it's the freest trail to walk from end to end. And that's where I feel it's important. But I don't know where that's going to be accomplished now. So there may have to be another, group formed just called Appalachian Freedom Hikers. And just like, West Virginia Mountaineers are always free, I always like that. I would like to think long-distance hikers are always free. And what does that entail? Well, I think that the beauty of the gathering is, like it's low cost. We fought. We're the only organization that central committee, after much talking, raising the dues from $5 to $6. We fought and fought over a steering committee about raising the dues $1. This is after about 7 years, 8 years, because postage going up, and when we brought it to the general membership overruled us and pushed it up to $7, and that tells you right there what type of organization it was. And hopefully it'll always remain that type of organization, that we'll never have this central office, full-time pay. This is a folk thing. This is volunteer. We're going to keep, hopefully it will be kept that way, because there's something happens when the money starts to pass. Whether it'll be able to survive that, I'm not sure. But to resist all the negative things about being really organized, and to take all the strengths of being organized without the things that trap you. And long distance hiking is like that. You need some structure to do this video, but you're doing it on your terms. It's not being sponsored by some corporation. So that's the important thing. And we showed that it could be done for 23, 24 years. And what's nice is that I was the first coordinator for 5 years, and then the organization was growing, and my children were growing as well, and and my job was growing, and so I stepped down because I couldn't. There's somebody else, and Cindy Ross stepped right in, and then since then we've had this just succession of coordinators that have done a remarkable job. When you think that the change of leadership, up to last, with Stacy having a 4-year term, up to her 2-year terms, all volunteers, and to see how well they've led this organization, put their own stamp on it, but still kept the central principles and honored them, I think is also remarkable. Whether that will continue, I don't know. I don't know. Like ALDA West, when we first formed ALDA, it was Appalachian. This is where most of the people were coming from, and it was hopefully, it's great to encourage people to do other trails. And when I met Ray Jardine coming down off Katahdin with his wife, he was saying, wouldn't it be nice to have something out west? I said, well, go ahead and start one, because originally I thought ALDA, just like the AT was the model for long distance trails, maybe the long trail was, but the AT in terms of National Scenic Trail was the model, and other trails that we're planning would look to the AT model. What I saw as ALDA is that, once there was enough people who had done the PCT and who lived out in the West Coast, that there'd be a, Pacific Long Distance Hikers Association, not ALDA West, but Pacific Long Distance, for all those trails out there. And then there'd be a, let's say, Continental Divide Long Distance Hikers. So where you had these 3 trails over the years, when there was enough people, that we would have these organizations that would be very folk and very face-to-face. No central office or anything like that.
Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.